I am Richard Bernstein, Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. So your question is, how does it work? How do you do it? If you have 25 cases that you're responsible for every single week, where people's entire lives are going to be impacted by the decisions that you make, and you're blind, how does that all come together? I love the Quran because the Holy Quran actually addresses this. It says that you should always be in motion, and the Quran is absolutely right. I have to memorize all 25 cases every single week.
कुछ कहानियाँ ज़ात पात, रंग और नस्ल से बढ़कर होती हैं क्योंकि वो दिलों को छू लेती हैं। आज की हमारी कहानी एक ऐसे शख्स की है जो खुद तो नज़र से महरूम है लेकिन दूसरों को राह दिखा रहा है।
We are responsible for 25 cases every single week. And what's important to point out is people's entire lives are hanging in the balance. We are the highest court of the state of Michigan. What that means is that the 11 million people who live in our great state look to the Supreme Court to make decisions that are going to affect everyone on a statewide basis. So whenever you're dealing with really the most serious of cases, when you're dealing with murder, when you're dealing with rape on the criminal side, when you're dealing with the civil cases, when you're dealing with water rights, environmental issues, education, and even so far as dealing with tax cases that can involve billions of dollars that impact the welfare of the state and the corporations and people in it, as well as cases that will sometimes be the most challenging when you're dealing with abuse and neglect, where parents are no longer going to have the right to see their children again. So every case has an incredible impact on the lives of the people who are affected by it. So when you ask the question, how do you keep up with your cases? The first thing that comes with it is within this position, you always have to understand the gravity of your decisions. And you have to understand the impact that your decisions are going to have on people's lives. Literally, people's freedom hang in the balance. So your question is, how does it work? How do you do it? If you have 25 cases that you're responsible for every single week, where people's entire lives are going to be impacted by the decisions that you make, and you're blind, how does that all come together? How does a blind person serve on the state's highest court? How does a blind person understand a crime scene? How does a blind person understand evidence? How does a blind person keep up with all the documents that are necessary? So I want you to think about this. Every Wednesday, there are 25 cases that we have to decide. And the court votes as to whether we're going to hear the case or not, and what the ultimate disposition is going to be. So most people would say, okay, if you're blind, do you put the cases into Braille and use Braille as a way to understand all the information? And the answer is no. You cannot use Braille in this position. And the reason is that if I give you one textbook page, you're going to give me 65 Braille pages. So think about that. For one textbook page, you're going to give me 65 Braille pages. So if you're trying to condense and understand a murder trial, you're going to have a month's worth of testimony. So if you've got a month of testimony, you can't put that into Braille. It's just too voluminous. And you got 25 cases every single week. So Braille is not an option. So then people say, well, do you use technology? Is that the way you do it? Well, technology doesn't work because if I'm using a computer, I'm not able to participate in the conversation. If I can't participate in the conversation because I'm so busy listening to my headset, then I'm not really effective at conference. So how do you do it? I have to memorize all 25 cases every single week. Now, I can't memorize the cases word for word because that's not possible, but I will know every key legal issue in the cases that we are deciding. And what will happen is that the commissioner is going to say, Justices, we are now on case 18. Case 18 is a carjacking that resulted in 2 homicides. When I hear carjacking resulting in 2 homicides, that triggers the entire case in my mind. So literally it's the mental trigger. And as a result, I am now familiar with that case in its entirety. And very quickly, there is one more challenge that you have to work through. Now again, you're not going to know the case word for word, but you're going to know all the key relevant issues of that case and all the legal issues that are going to be ultimately voted on and decided. And then you have one more challenge, because you're not done yet. You don't just have to know the case that you're voting on. We're a common law system. So you have to know all the relevant cases that correspond. So there are cases that work for you, and you have to know all those cases to make your argument. And then there are cases that work against your position, and you have to be able to distinguish all those cases so that they don't work against you. So for each case, you have to know the case you're voting on, all the cases that support your position, and all the cases that work against your position. So in answering your question, the responsibility is great. It's incredibly intense, but you're looking at 12-hour days. You are looking at a very aggressive and intensive timeline. And basically, every Wednesday, you walk into conference, you know those cases backwards and forwards because you realize that people's whole lives depend on what you do. Yeah. So I have an incredible team that I work with, and I have 6 clerks that work with me. And they are remarkable people, because to work for a blind justice requires a lot more effort than working for a justice who doesn't have a severe disability. So our work product is outstanding because it takes so much more effort and so much more intensity for us to basically perform the job. Because if it takes you 1 hour to do something, it takes me 5 to do the same thing. So as a result, the work that we're able to do is, I believe, outstanding, because the intensity and the veracity that we put into it in order to make sure that we're doing it well is massive. Right. So the way that it works is, I was in a catastrophic accident a couple years ago. And this was a horrible accident. I was born blind, and I love athletics, and I had done, I've done 24 marathons and a full Ironman, but I was walking in Central Park and I got hit by a bicyclist. And the accident was catastrophic. And it required over 10 weeks of hospitalization at New York's Mount Sinai Hospital. The challenge with the accident was that it was such a traumatic accident that it left me, 10 weeks in the hospital having to learn how to walk again. What ultimately happened is that it leaves you with chronic pain. So you have to live with a lot of pain that arises from the accident. And I think what you find from anyone that's been through a traumatic accident is that when you have a pain challenge or a pain issue that is with you at all times, you want to move. It's contrary to what you'd think. If you sit still, it's very uncomfortable because the pain is higher. If you move and you exercise, and again, that's why I love the Quran, because the Holy Quran actually addresses this. It says that you should always be in motion, and the Quran is absolutely right. And the reason the Quran is right, especially for people who are injured, if the body is moving, the pain is lessened. It's not as intense. And what ultimately it does is that when you're moving, which is what the body is designed to do, which is what the Quran illustrates, it really alleviates so much of the discomfort if you're in motion. Because ironically, it's kind of different from what you think. You think that if you have injuries like mine, that you'd want to sit still. But it's not the truth. You want to move. And the more you're moving, the less anguish you feel. And then what I also find is that if I'm walking, and I go to places that I've memorized. So here in Dubai, I've memorized Jumeirah Beach, and it's very easy. You just go back and forth. So you get to Jumeirah, you walk south all the way to the very end, and the path is fantastic. I mean, it's even a cushioned path, which makes it even easier to walk on. And then you just simply go from the south end all the way up to Lamar, and then you can walk back and forth. It's very easy, and there's plenty of space.
दुबई में रहने के बावजूद जज रिचर्ड ने अपना काम नहीं छोड़ा। क्योंकि वो पढ़ नहीं सकते, इसलिए उन्होंने अपने केसेस याद करने का अनोखा तरीका अपनाया है, चल चल के। कई बार तो वो लगातार 6-6 घंटे भी चले।
I usually walk between 6 to 7 to 8 hours. And I have a charger for my phone, and ultimately I just basically keep the phone charging, so that way I'm able to kind of continue to work and exercise at the same time. If you're out moving and you're in motion, first off, what I think it does is it gives you a sense of peace. It depends. When you're walking, you're learning. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you have to do. You have to internalize the cases, and that's what takes a lot of time. So that usually involves, one primary clerk where you are learning the information and you're learning the cases. Then what happens is you'll conference with your office, because what you'll do is you have to learn the materials. And then after you learn the materials, you have to do a full office conference. Because what happens is that after you've learned it, you have to decide what you want to do. So it's a very lengthy process. It's a very intensive process. It's a very exhaustive process. And it's for the most part, I would say it's 7 days a week, and it's constant. Because I can't read and write, so, this is the way that you're able to have a command of the information. And only after you know the information are you then able to, have a significant conversation and be challenged, and then ultimately render a verdict. So what's important to point out is that I did advocacy before becoming a justice. So in the U.S., once you become a high court judge, you're not really able to advocate for different positions. There's an old saying that when you become a judge, you go from being on the field and a player in the game to reffing the game. So you go from being an active participant to a person who is now ultimately calling the plays. Was this right? You're the ref. And so you have to be conscious that, you don't allow for your personal beliefs or ideology to ever interfere or influence the decisions that you ultimately make. However, before becoming a Supreme Court justice, that's what I dedicated my life to. My entire life was dedicated to helping people with disabilities have more freedoms, have more independence. I wanted them to just simply have a better life. And I went to law school for that purpose. And I'll just tell you a very quick story. When I was in law school, getting through school as a blind person was excruciating. I mean, it was beyond excruciating in terms of what you had to do to just simply get your degree and then pass the bar. And I used to pray every night that I would have the strength and the tenacity to survive this process, because I wanted to be a lawyer in the absolute worst way. And I promised God that if He gave me the chance to become a lawyer, I would dedicate my entire life to helping people with disabilities have more access and allow for them to be better represented in the judicial system, so as a result that their lives could be made better. And after graduating from law school, I dedicated my entire existence to fulfilling that promise and focus on cases that nobody else would take, but that would really have an impact on people who needed the representation the most. I think it's an incredible place. I was only supposed to be here for 2 weeks, and it ultimately turned into 3 months. And the thing that I will tell you that I love about the UAE, it's what I would tell you about any Islamic country. I have to say it because I believe so strongly in this. I love, absolutely love being in an Islamic country. I think it makes such a huge difference. And the reason is as a person like me, who I love the terminology they use in the UAE. They don't call us people with disabilities. They call us people of determination. I have never heard of a better description than that description. It is the greatest description I've ever heard, because that's what we are. We aren't people with disabilities. We are people of determination, because we are people that have to live with passion and energy. We are people who know struggle. We are people who know challenge. We are people who know adversity. And we are people that work through that to have an impact that is positive on the lives of others. You know, if you look to the Holy Quran, it will give you guidance and wisdom and allow for you to live a good life. But the most beautiful thing about the Holy Quran is what it says about people who live with struggle. And it says that people like me should never be left alone. What that means is that if you see someone who is dealing with hardship or difficulty, you need to go to them. And what's beautiful about being an Islamic country is that people follow that and they live by that. And because people are so kind, and because people are so warm, and because people are so empathetic, and because people are so understanding, a person like me is able to be independent. I'm able to go to Jumeirah. I'm able to take the train. I'm able to go on the bus. I'm able to cross the street, because people will always help you. They will always assist you, and you know that when you go out, that someone will always be watching over you and will always be there to assist you. Well, my hope is that I would love to have the opportunity to come and visit Pakistan, because I am absolutely certain, and especially, it's a place of incredible hosts. And when you go to a place where the people love to host and look after you, well, I think that it's just the notion that what you find in Pakistan is of kindness. And the thing that I love, I mean, truly love, when you have the chance to be around Muslim people, they're just so, I mean, they're so kind, and they're so warm, and they're so welcoming, and there is just this genuine kindness. And people just, you love being with them, because you can just feel the warmth and the sensitivity and the kindness and the spirit. And it's very rare that you have the opportunity to spend time with people who approach you with such genuine warmth and sensitivity. And when you're around people like that, you just enjoy their presence, you enjoy their company, because you feel at home and you feel like you're truly being welcomed. And honestly, the thing that I would love, if we have the opportunity to visit Pakistan, is we could have a chance to spend time with a lot of folks that do struggle, that do have hardship, that do face challenge, and that do have to live in the shadows. And I think what's great is when they see videos like this, that families can see possibilities, siblings can see a different way of life, and people can see that anything and everything is possible. And I think the whole notion of having the opportunity to spend time with people in Pakistan is that we can change the narrative, and we can change the idea that if you have a family member, if you have a friend, if you have someone you care about that is struggling, that they have a wonderful life that lies before them, that they have incredible opportunities, that they have a place and a mission. And ultimately, if we have the opportunity to do that, if we have the chance to ultimately to embrace that idea, then I believe that is fundamentally the concept, the notion, the mission, and the beauty. Oh, wow.
Okay, there are two of them. There are two types.
Oh, wow. That's delicious. I have to say, though, do you know I walked 20 miles today? I walked 20 miles, and it was 110 degrees. And the reason I say that is because now I can really enjoy this. You can't eat this unless you've done at least 20 miles. It's delicious.
Yes. You might love this too.
Oh my God.
It's going to be really sweet for you.
That is delicious. But you can't eat this unless you really exercise. Like you either have to run a marathon after you eat this. Oh my God. That is amazing.
Slightly sweet for you?
I love it. No, it's fantastic. I gotta tell you something.
That's called gulab jamun.
It's delicious.
आज की कहानी से अगर हमने कोई सबक सीखा है तो वो ये है कि इंसान सिर्फ खुद से हार सकता है, वरना उसको हराना नामुमकिन है। ऐसी और कहानियों के साथ आइंदा तक के लिए अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।